Hello YouTubers, my name's Frank. Just want to make this short little video, a cause failure analysis. Something every mechanic should do, and it just happens to be on my Ariens 93 2104 snowblower. It's currently -3 out here, so I'm working in the shed. And what I had happen was the snowblower itself started originally pulling me along in forward and wouldn't stop, but in reverse it would let go and it was hard to change gears. Now most people would suspect the friction drive, which in this case it was, but as you can see, there's a brand new friction plate in there, new wheel, new bearings, all the new bushings have been replaced, so I basically overhauled the whole transmission. And the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because sometimes you have to look beyond what you see. Okay, in this case, there's new belts and everything on the machine, and what I want you guys to know is that Ariens provides some very good service manuals for free via their website. Tells you how to assemble, disassemble, change things, put things together. And I use a guy called Jack Small Engines. He's actually located at jacksmallengines.com. He's got very detailed parts, explosions, and diagrams for everything. And a little bit about myself. I'm a master automotive mechanic with L1 and L2, A1 through A9, which includes light-duty diesel, but I've also worked on heavy-duty diesel for Freightliner. Anyway, what I wanted to show y'all is, here is the friction drive wheel. Obviously it's worn pretty flat. It doesn't have the round ridge that it's supposed to have anymore at the top. Usually when these things go bad, because the wheel does move along a shaft this way, they wear down a little bit, and you would be able to adjust them on this specific machine by pulling this cable a little bit more taut. In the case of this machine, it needs 6 1/4 to 6 1/8 between the handle and the operator's holder handle to start engagement. Now, why did this wear? Oh, good question. I noticed that when this is the actual plate that sits beyond it, and it might be kind of hard to see, but you'll see these little nicks about where my thumb is, and it go all the way around the wheel. That's because the friction drive plate was actually contacting this axle. Now, why was it doing that? Well, was it slop in the bearing here? That's part of it, I would say. But really, slop in the bearing in this bearing would not have anything to do with it. Because, if you'll notice, here's the whole assembly, again, that there's a shaft that holds that. So, as the shaft has some play in it, a few $100,000, not so bad, it's supposed to have. What was really the failure is if we look really close, and it might be hard to see, you'll see little copper and bronze bushing failure particles all around this bearing, which in turn has led to the slop in this bearing. This bearing is very sloppy, and this is the bearing that pushes up the friction plate to engage the friction drive wheel. So on this end is the pulley that drives this unit from the front of the machine and the engine. And if you remove the pulley and take out the Woodruff key and then disassemble the entire transmission, because this has to come out, you'll notice that there's a shaft there, and this shaft has a thrust bearing on it, thrust washer, and that's what goes in here. Now, like I said, there's a little bit of play there. Not so much to really worry about. This I'd be more concerned about. But the actual failure is this bushing here. They don't use a bearing per se on this machine to hold this shaft. What they use is an oil light bronze bushing retained by this capture nut on the back here. This is the capture nut, and this squeezes between the machine chassis. And if you'll notice, this hole is severely oblonged and worn out. And that was the actual cause of the failure. You can see that it dug into the backside of this bearing pretty heavily. So what that all did was that, as this bushing, as you can see, has significant play, wore out, it allowed this friction wheel to tilt. In forward gear, it would make the machine pull you and not want to come out of gear. You actually had to lean down and shut the motor off, adversely affecting the friction drive wheel, of course. And in reverse, because this rides on one side and then the other side for the other direction as it shifts along this way, is why it would only do it in forward. So when you're looking at your machine to figure out a problem or why it doesn't drive or whatever, look real closely, examine all components that basically interact with what you think is wrong. The other good thing is, like I said, service manual. These are printouts right from Ariens on how to service the friction drive plate, how to service the how to adjust it. Here's the throws. Like I said, 6 1/8 to 6 1/4 inches. How to set up your brake. One of the other things is, if you don't know, ask somebody who's knowledgeable and does know. I mean, here it's -3. This machine has served me for 10.5 years. I fell into the trap just like everybody else. It's a friction drive plate. Yeah, it was the friction wheel. And as you can see, everything's spinning real nice now and all lubricated properly. And that plate is absolutely spotlessly clean. There's not a bit of oil or drops on it. And so is the wheel. And that must be spotless. Denatured alcohol works pretty good, and some people use carb cleaner and stuff like that. But again, you can pretty much see that here's the friction drive plate. Here's the bearing that the friction drive plate rides on. Obviously, this is all new. Each bearing at the end here, now these are roller bearings on either side. They were absolutely fine. But down here is the they use that oil-like bushings in this machine quite extensively. So there's one here, and there's some in here. The belts are new. Obviously, didn't need to change the pulley or nothing because that didn't wear. But, something to be aware of. Look at the cause failure analysis, and not just what you suspect. It'll save you a lot of time. This machine's been down for about a month and a half because I just ordered the pieces that I needed or thought I needed without inspecting the machine fully. And sometimes it's overconfidence in my abilities, but I do service a lot of things between cars and trucks and medium duty trucks, heavy duty trucks, packaging equipment. I've worked for some of the bigger companies doing some of our favorite sodas, some of our favorite cosmetics for the women, and some of our favorite drugs. But I just wanted people to be aware of that. Now, just real quick, if you do want to change the friction drive assembly in an Ariens 932104 machine, basically what you have to do is disconnect the friction drive plate actuator. Pull this R key out, pull this out. Okay, you'll find in the main drive back here on this side there's a roll pin, and there's a roll pin over here. Now these are two separate roll pins. You want to drive this one out and this one out, which will allow this shaft to move on this gear, and you will slide the shaft to the left. Okay, now take off both wheels by removing the retaining clip there and over there. Now in between the wheel here, there's a thrust washer, and then there's another one of those bronze oil light bearings. So you want to be careful and note the position of all your washers. And the reason being is if you have to change the friction drive plate, you must take out this lower shaft, which in that case you may have to take a file, and where these holes come through here on the wheels, file them away to make them round again so they will slide back out. But anyway, to get back to replacing that friction wheel up here. So once you have taken the wheels off, there's 4 bolts on each bearing cap here and over here. You take them off and you pull the bearings out, okay, and that'll allow you to move the friction drive shaft around. Now, but before you do that, you might want to push out these 2 roll pins, one which is over here where my finger is, and the other which is right there. You punch out them roll pins so you can move this. You're going to disconnect the selector shaft, which gives you your speeds. There's an R key on the back and a washer. Pull this out after it's disconnected, and with the movement in this shaft, you should be able to get this whole assembly out. So you have to remove this shaft here with the gear on it, and then the shaft in the front. Slide the friction drive assembly off the shaft, put your new wheel back on. Note that one side is recessed and one side is not, and note that you have a washer here and a washer here. They must be back in place. And then just reverse your process to put it all back together. Now just remember that this friction drive plate and this wheel must be absolutely spotlessly clean. It's a friction drive, therefore no lubrication can be applied to either surface, otherwise it will slip and not create the friction necessary for driving the machine. Lightly lubricate the gears and make sure that the shafts are all lubricated, and you should be ready to go. But again, cause failure analysis is your best bet. Like I said, this machine has been down for about a month and a half. We just had a snow today. Had to borrow the old man's snowblower. Don't really like doing that, because that inconveniences him. And then if I break his machine, we're all a little SOL. But this machine is ready to go. It's all adjusted. All I have to do is put the transmission pan back on, which is 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I have to put the belt cover back on also because I had the belts off. Alright, well, I hope this video helps people realize that there might be more going on than they think, and might give them an idea of where to get the manuals and stuff. The manuals are available for the Ariens machines at ariens.com, ariens.com. Like I says, if you need parts, Jack Small Engines, he's a great guy. Help you out. Him and his staff are excellent. I had parts here within a couple days in the Northeast. Even though we had some seriously heavy snows here a few years ago, and shear pins and belts and all of that were in short supply, he got them right out to me within a couple days. He usually provides 2-day standard shipping, and great thing to keep is your owner's manual, and know what you're doing. Now again, when assembling things, if you're not really experienced at doing this, and you don't have any natural feel for mechanics, always consult the service manual, learn things about torque and tightening bolts and making sure things are square, and you should be able to do it yourself. If not, consult a qualified service department. There are many places that will pick up your small engine equipment, repair it, and deliver it for a nominal fee. It is a machine. It can hurt you and remove fingers, especially a snowblower. I've seen it happen. learn to operate it safely, and do what you have to. Again, thank you for your time. Hope this video gives you some idea of how things work. But basically, real quick again, this belt drives the shaft, which drives the friction plate here in the transmission. When pulling on this cable, it pushes the friction plate up into the friction drive wheel, which then in turn spins that chain, which turns the main gear for the wheels. Depending on the position of that wheel, if it's to this side, we're in forward gear, and if we're on this side, we're in reverse gear. And the reason being is that wheel will spin this way, causing us to have reverse motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, it spins this way. And then here's our forward motion. And then when the wheel is on the other side, it's causing this wheel to go up, which is giving us reverse. Alright. Have a great day, YouTubers. Be safe and stay warm. It's -3 out here in the Northeast. And I'm cold. I'm going inside and having coffee. Later.